Hey, David Bruce here in the episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Great White, and of course we're going to be talking about Mark Kendall. And Great White formed in Los Angeles, California in 1977, but it wasn't until the mid to late 80s when they finally hit their stride and found their audience. And the album Once Bitten in 1987 had the hits Rock Me and Save Your Love. They followed that with Twice Shy in 1989, which had the huge hit Once Bitten, Twice Shy, which actually wasn't a Great White song. That was actually written by Ian Hunter, the rock legend. But regardless, that song and that cover definitely put them on the map. It was huge, and I remember a time when they played that on the radio all day, every day. MTV, spun the music video like 20 or 30 times every day. And speaking of Great White and MTV, there is kind of this important moment in their career that seems to be just completely overlooked or almost forgotten these days. But in MTV's, just their heyday, like in the late 80s and early 90s, they unveiled the Unplugged program, which eventually became very popular. Of course, Nirvana and Eric Clapton and a whole bunch of people released, very successful albums. Actually, Clapton's Unplugged album is his most successful album, period. But before that, there's this little window in this timeline. Bon Jovi appeared on the VMAs in 1989. I think that was in September. And then MTV eventually unveiled their Unplugged program. I think that was in November of 1989. And then Great White was one of the first, bands that played on Unplugged. I think that was actually in March of 1990. And then eventually Tesla released, their very popular album, Five-Man Acoustical Jam, which that was later in, I think that was like November of 1990. But there's that kind of explosion of this acoustic rock and, bands like Bon Jovi, Great White, of course, eventually Tesla. They really helped kind of establish that on MTV. And then I found it really interesting that MTV kind of turned their back on bands like Great White. And then they continued, and eventually Nirvana and some of those bands appeared on their show. But Great White did a great cover of Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You by Led Zeppelin on their, performance on Unplugged. And I've talked to a bunch of people and they totally forgot about that. They're like, oh yeah, Great White totally rocked that old Zeppelin song. When I was putting this lesson together, I wasn't initially going to talk about this, but then I thought about it and I thought, no, this is a pretty big kind of historical moment, connected with this band. But in 2003, there was actually a very tragic and awful fire at one of their shows. I think it was in Rhode Island. And touring guitarist Ty Longley actually died or perished in that fire, which is horrible and tragic. Rest in peace, Ty. But when I talk to people these days about Great White, it seems like that's all they remember, the fire and Once Bitten, Twice Shy. And there's a lot more than just those two things, in their career or legacy. And that's what we're going to hit in this lesson. There's some really cool, chord-based ideas and riffs. And Mark Kendall, is a phenomenal guitarist. So here we go. The opening, that's Missed a Bone from the Twice Shy album. Cool riff. Something like this. So we're just rocking out in E, and he starts with this open, open string single note riff right here. And that's just basically the E, kind of bouncing on that, and then that G, G sharp to A. Then you're going to shift up and grab this A sharp to B thing, like this. Right here. And then right there, you're going to answer that with this. And that's kind of weird because you're reaching over and grabbing that E note and then going right back to that B on the low E string. So it's kind of tricky, for your fret hands. Right there, it's kind of hard to do. And then start the riff over again. You're going to grab this little partial E minor 7 right here and just bang on it. and then do that A sharp to B to a D power chord right here. And then you're going to basically play the low E, the 3rd fret there on that G note to the low E open, and then a G power chord to an A power chord. And then start the riff over. So the first half is this. And then the second half, the end's just ever so different, like this. So you're kind of doing those, you know, kind of staccato or rhythmic hits, you know, on that A to a G5 to an E power chord there. Next to the song On the Edge from the Once Bitten album, and we're just rocking out an E, something like this. So it's, you know, it's pretty basic, but I like these kind of twisted, you know, partial chords and power chord riffs. It kind of reminds me of George Lynch a little bit. And, you know, basically the whole time we're just banging hopelessly on this low E string open. And then you'll hear this series of chords. And you could relate those to power chords, you know, E5, you know, a D over E, and a C over E. But you could also relate those to E, since we're obviously in the key of E here. So that would be an E5. And then right there you could think of that as an E7 sus4, you know, with that D note and that A note right there. And then that, you could think of this as an E minor flat 6, you know, that G note with that C combined with that low E open. And then you hear it move, that C moves up to C sharp, and that would just be an E minor 6 now. Back to that E7 sus4, go back to that you know, that 5th fret bar right there where we had that E minor flat 6, and then you hear him kind of move down with those single notes to the open E string, and he starts it over like this. Up next is House of Broken Love from the Twice Shy album, and I've seen some really funky ways of people playing this song, but I'm pretty sure Mark just played it in open position, and there is kind of a curveball chord, you know, thrown in the mix, but something like this. So it actually starts with this A minor 7, just pick through it, and then you hear this, and that's basically a G sus4 over D, because we're just playing the top 4 strings right there. You know, pick through that A minor 7, let that ring, and then just move over and grab that the G note there on the high E string, and then strum the top 4 strings like that. You know, make sure you take your middle finger off that E note right there you had for the A minor 7. Go back to the A minor 7, and then the second time just play a G5 over D right there. And if you really listen to the song, you can hear that that kind of alternate ending. You know, you got the G sus4, and then the second time the G5 over D. Just a little twist in that progression. Okay, up next is Mistreater from the Once Bitten album, and it's this swampy blues riff, something like this. Playing around with E7, and you know, he keeps hitting that low E string, and he's grabbing these little partial chords. That's kind of like a little piece of E7 right there. And you know, it kind of reminds me of AC/DC. It's got this big blues kind of feel to it. So you're going to do those two little partial chords, and then you're going to reach down and grab that G note there on the 3rd fret and kind of do a slight bend, and then grab the E root right there on the 2nd fret on the D string, like that. Reminds me of Have a Drink on Me from AC/DC, just in a different key, and of course the rhythm's a little different, but it kind of has that feel in a way, kind of slowed down a bit. And the last time you're going to do that riff, and then right here, basically do the single note line into, it's basically a B7 sus4 right there. It's going to feel kind of like B7 right there, but you're playing the high E string open on the top. Something like that, but cool riff. Next we have Rock Me from the Once Bitten album, and I'm going to use the TC Electronic Ditto looper to kind of recreate this, but you've got the bass, you know, kind of doing that opening. And you just kind of hear that bass, you know, pedaling that open part. And then you hear the guitar come in real quiet. Basically the bass is just grabbing that F sharp, you know, just pedaling that the whole time, and that's all I looped, you know, for that that part. We're basically playing partial chords over that F sharp root, you know, the bass is supplying right there, and you'll hear this double stop there on the 2nd fret, kind of implying, you know, F sharp minor, which is what key we're in. But you're just hearing, you know, the 2nd fret there on the G and the B. I'm also hybrid picking that, you know, with my middle and 3rd finger. And then I'm picking the root notes, you know, with the pick. Like that. So you're moving from the 2nd fret, grabbing that F sharp root note, and then grabbing a double stop there on the 4th fret on the G and the B, like this. And then that little fill, it's kind of quick. And you're basically grabbing a single A to that F sharp, and then the double stop there on the 2nd fret on the G and the B, back to that F sharp. Like that. But it's kind of quick. And then you hear that F sharp move to E, do it again, and then you hear the F sharp to E the 2nd time, do it again, and then you hear this little fill, and he's basically, you know, think of F sharp minor pentatonic but up an octave, and we're kind of raking into basically, you know, grabbing the C sharp to that E to that A, and then grab that B and bend it up a whole step. And he's kind of raking into that bend. You know, very bluesy sound. Go back to the double stops. I think the last time he just moves F sharp to E right there, but that definitely establishes and sets up the intro. Up next to the song Desert Moon from the Hooked album, and I already had this song on my list, and then when I did the research for this lesson and read a little bit more about the fire that happened in 2003, this was the song they opened with at that concert, you know, when the fire started. And they stopped playing this, you know, for several years, for a long time, and then they started adding it back into their set. And it kind of reminds me of the Scorpions, so I wanted to include this, but I didn't realize, like, this was the song that opened that concert, which is tragic. But cool riff. Like I said, it reminds me of the Scorpions. power chords, and you're just banging on the C-sharp 5. You're going to move that up to E5, move that down to B5, and then hike all the way up to F-sharp 5. And you can actually kind of hear that he stays on that A and D string. And you could relocate, that B and C-sharp to kind of accommodate, and put all those chords in one little location. But I think it's actually all over the fretboard. I think Mark's, shifting around in different positions like that. Okay, I saved the best for last. This is Save Your Love from the Once Bitten album, and I hadn't heard this song in years until I started putting this lesson together and kind of doing the research and listening to some of their music again, and it had just gotten away from me. It had been a very long time. And as soon as I heard Save Your Love again, it just came back to me, and I thought, oh my gosh, I forgot how great this song is. And this is the verse part, and there's some really cool stuff going on here. But the verse, it's got this kind of extended, intro, and the verse starts like this. Great guitar part, love it. So it starts with this kind of unusual E minor. You're basically grabbing the root note there on the A, and then the open G, B, and high E strings right there. And then you hear this E minor major 7 just for a second. Move that E down to D sharp and kind of play with those open strings. And then go back to the root note there and do it again. So you're kind of doing this D sharp and then the open B, open G, open B, and then the E with that open B, open G, open B, like this. Okay. Then you're going to relocate down here to a C major 7 right here. Alright, so as soon as you kind of pick through that, you've got these little single notes. So you're kind of moving into that A. You're going to basically relocate to an A sus2 right there. And this is really tasty. So there's an B sus4 or a B6 sus4. Something like that. So back at the beginning here. That's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Great White. And like I mentioned earlier, I just think it's unfortunate that most people remember Great White and The Fire, and they don't remember their music or Mark Kendall or the early days of MTV's Unplugged, the videos and stuff they used to play on MTV. And I did see Great White in concert back in the day, and it was with Tesla and Great White. And Badlands actually canceled, and I was so upset because I really wanted to see Jake E. Lee. Badlands canceled. Tesla came out and rocked and just completely, melted my brain because I always loved Tesla. And then Great White came out and they were the headliner, and I really enjoyed their show. But I already had my ears kind of nuked, by Tesla. So by the time Great White came out, I was into it. But I'd already kind of, already wasted my gas, I guess, with energy or whatever with Tesla. But I do remember that concert. I was pretty young, but I just remembered thinking, man, they sounded just like the album, which is so good. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.